What's up in War Eagle War Report family? It's your guy Ike Jones back with another morning drop. Today we are discussing quarterback Holden Geriner. Does he have a real chance to win the QB1 job? Let's talk about it. Y'all know how we do right here, War Report style. Let's drop it on him.
You are now listening to the War Report.
Morning drop, Monday, February 26th. Ike Jones, Mike G in here, talking a little Auburn football. While y'all are in here, make sure you're doing the necessary and sharing the content out there on social media with somebody. And drop that hashtag, get your weight up when you're doing that to let us know what's up. Add us on the social media at the War Report as well. And if you be so kind, right down there in the bottom of the video, go ahead and click that like button, get those likes up on there. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. But Mike, we're in here talking a little QB as spring approaches and the forgotten man in the quarterback race. A lot of hype about Hank Brown, a lot of talk about Peyton Thorne, but Holden Geriner sitting right there, redshirt sophomore. And the question is, have we seen enough? And is it fair to judge Holden off of the small sample size and opportunity that he's had so far?
Is it fair? Maybe not. Is it his situation? It definitely is the cards that he kind of drew. Holden was in a precarious situation last year with two guys who have started games in the SEC, in Power 5 football, I should say, in front of him. You had Peyton Thorne, obviously, who Hugh Freeze brought in with the intent to start, and you had Robbie Ashford, who, although he played hurt, he still started a lot of games last season. I mean, you're talking for a guy who had a 200-yard game against Arkansas, a 300 game versus LSU, and that experience seemed like it was a lot to overcome for him. Is it fair that we judge him on this sample size? I would say no, Ike, that it's not fair to judge him on this sample size. But will he get another chance? Whew, man, we'll deal with that later in this segment. It's tough to look at the situations where Holden has gotten into the game and been asked to throw the ball or been not allowed to throw the ball.
Right.
Now we're going to get into stats later, but I don't think it's fair for this young man to be judged based on the sample size that we've seen. It really hasn't been a lot. We'll dig into that, but certainly he's going to have to do some work and practice this spring to overcome that perception.
Yeah, I think, he is behind the eight ball. B. Will and I talked about this on the weekend tailgate about, and I'll ask you the question that I asked him on the tailgate, which is, which quarterback has the most to prove out of this quarterback room and which quarterback has the most to lose in this quarterback room during the spring. I said the guy who has the most to prove is Holden Geriner. Right. I feel like Holden has the most to figure out how he's going to get himself positioned properly, whether that's at Auburn or somewhere else. He needs to prove he can be a collegiate quarterback. And he hasn't had that opportunity yet. So now is the proving ground right now during the spring. But do you agree with that? Do you think that Holden has the most to prove out of this room?
Yes, I do agree with that. Holden certainly has the most to prove. When you're trying to win the starting job coming from behind as Holden is with no experience, you have to prove more in practice. You have to be that much better than the guys in practice for them to take a chance on you when you've got an incumbent starter and you've got a guy who got in the game, in a bowl game and outplayed everybody. So, trying to do that from practice seems it's a difficult task. I think that Holden Geriner has the most to prove by a long shot. He's got to go out there. He's got to be the most consistent in practice. He's got to be the most accurate. He's got to be the guy that makes the least amount of mistakes if he's going to expect the coaches to choose him without that gameplay on the field. Without that film, man, it's difficult with the guys that he's going to be going up against this spring.
Yeah, I think that, Holden has an opportunity here to to at least close the gap in the perception of the coaches. Forget what the fans think about whether or not he's ready. The coaching perception, whether he can close the gap on what they have in their minds as who can be the guy that can lead this team, because it's going to be and I think it's going to be a really good battle if we get a true quarterback competition, which I don't even know what that really feels like as an Auburn fan. Somebody who's been covering this team, I haven't seen a quarterback competition. Like not one that I feel like has been serious, at least in a while. So looking forward to seeing a true competition this spring amongst the I'd say three potential candidates that should be having the opportunity. I don't want to count Walker White in the spring. I'm not saying he doesn't have an opportunity this fall. In the spring, I'm not going to put Walker White in that conversation just yet. But I think he's got as good a chance as anybody by the time the fall rolls around to be able to get into that conversation. Let's shift gears here a little bit and let's talk about, we said maybe he didn't have the best opportunity out there, based upon his appearances, but let's talk about what he actually did. As few numbers as there are out there, let's look at it by the numbers and see what Holden Geriner has been able to produce for Auburn in his limited opportunities. What do the statistics look like for him?
He saw his first game action versus UMass on September 2nd. He threw 2 passes in that game for 59 yards, kind of showing off that arm that everybody knows that he has. Holden is a pure passer. We saw a little bit of that. His next action was versus Texas A&M, the best pass defense in the league. He went 2 for 7 for 8 yards, so didn't look great there. He got in versus Ole Miss, didn't throw a pass in that game. I think they had him. It was, Auburn maybe had him handed off, or there were some gadget plays there, but he had no stats in that game. And then there was Maryland, 1 for 6 for 8 yards. He had a pass that he completed kind of over the middle and not a lot. So when we talked to Al Borges, you and I did, he said that clock that a quarterback has in his head when he feels the pressure, he can't fix that.
Right.
And there are a lot of people who feel like Holden Geriner is suffering from that pressure clock. I'm not so sure. I just think it hasn't been advantageous situations that he's gotten into the game where he can kind of ease himself in. But when you're trying to win a starting job at the SEC level, you don't always get your ideal start to the game. So you've got to perform in the situations that you're put in. And versus Maryland, he got pulled for the 3rd string because they thought maybe that I don't want to say, I'm struggling to not say that it looked that bad, but obviously they didn't like.
Well, they just needed some kind of spark, right? Like it was like, hey, this isn't it. Let's go, see what the other guy has. And they just needed to be able to give an opportunity to see what Hank Brown could do in live action, because that was the first Hank Brown had seen the field at all. They were just like, hey,
and his college career.
Yeah. It's like, hey, we don't have anything to lose at this point. Let's let the other guy get in there and sling it for a minute. So,
yeah, it seems like the door is closing on Holden Geriner to try to win this job.
Yeah.
And that's why I say, once you start getting reps, live reps in games, and we talked about the stats, right? So, that's not a lot of yards. I mean, that's like 70 something yards passing in a season, but he only got 15 reps the whole season.
Yeah,
it was 5 for 15 on the year, and it's just tough. I don't think it's been a great situation. It's just crappy luck if you're Holden Geriner. That these are the repetitions that you've gotten in the first year under a coach where, let's be honest, the whole passing game struggled last year.
It was a mess last year.
Yeah,
we've looked at the numbers of the wide receivers. We looked at some of the quarterback numbers. The pass game was an absolute mess last year.
Yeah, Holden's numbers weren't the only ones that, you had a quarterback essentially that started that threw for about around 100 or less yards 6 or 7 times last season. So, it wasn't a great situation. I think that this is a type of kid who, if he gets a shot, could transfer to another program, maybe a G5 program, and do really, really well instantly because he is that talented. But if you give him a chance to start from day one, I think he could go out and perform.
Yeah, I mean, listen, everyone who has seen Holden Geriner throw a football remarks on the talent that his arm possesses. The question is whether or not, like you said, when he gets in the game, whether or not he's able to feel the pressure, but not let it affect him. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that you really haven't had an opportunity to see. That Maryland game wasn't a great, they didn't pressure him a lot, but he wasn't super accurate in that game. When I look at the PFF numbers for Holden, he actually suffered the most of the 3 Auburn quarterbacks that saw duty. I'm talking about the 3 that will be coming back next season, because I'm excluding Robbie Ashford from that conversation. But even if you put Robbie back in the conversation, he suffered the most from any Auburn quarterback last year from drops. Actually, he had the highest drop rate of any quarterback. So if we want to talk about somebody who in small sample sizes wasn't helped out by the wide receivers at all, that answer is Holden Geriner, right? And so I think, his statistics look bad, but they look even worse when it's so much more bad when you look at it because of how poorly the receivers performed in the opportunities that he was giving them. And they weren't always the most accurate passes in the world. But again, if we're going to talk about drops, Holden's the guy that suffers the most when you introduce drops into the conversation.
Yeah, I'll close with this. I think that the numbers are not necessarily indicative of the type of quarterback he is, more than they are the type of situation that he was put in.
Agreed.
So Holden Geriner is a good quarterback. Whether he'll get a chance to show that at the college level is the story of every talented athlete.
Right.
Right. You sometimes are a victim of the system and the situations that you're in. And some guys get a chance to climb out of that. Others do not.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think anybody who, and this is why people talk about sports being metaphors for life. If you take anything away from your athletic days in Holden Geriner, if you're listening, or any, athlete out there, it's less about, kind of how good you are, but like seizing opportunities that present themselves and making the most of each of those chances. So hopefully whatever the next chance is for him, and for right now, that chance is spring practice. He takes every opportunity to present his best self out there for the coaches so that he can have a chance to be able to compete for that starting job. But speaking of presenting your best self, if you're a person out there that wants to present your best self, do that with Manscaped. Make sure you go over to manscaped.com and use code RAPPORT. Cheers to the new year from our friends at Manscaped. Because your resolution shouldn't be the only thing that's well kept, 2024 is the time for new heights, new opportunities, and a new look for your Times Square balls. I love every Manscaped read. Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is every man's cheat code to look good, feel good, and turn the page on confidence this year. Whether you're looking to maintain a trim or go for that clean-shaven look, this trimmer has you covered. Trusted by over 10 million men worldwide. Now it's time to get a grip on your grooming with an exclusive offer by going to Manscaped and using code RAPPORT. This gets you 20% off and free shipping. Happy New Year, or happy new balls. We're still out here achieving New Year's resolutions. And, the New Year's resolution for the guys in this quarterback room should be that they go out there and get a grip on their balls, not those that you're talking about. We're talking about footballs to be able to make good passes out here to these wide receivers. But let's get into the final question that we have for this, Mike. And that is, do you think that Holden has a real chance to win the job? Can he do it?
If you had asked me this before the bowl game, I would have said yes. Not before the season starts, but potentially in season. Now, why am I saying that? Well, we know that there was some conversation had about Peyton Thorne being the guy going into 2024. So it seemed like they were going to lean on him. I don't know maybe if the coaches hear the things they say out loud sometimes, but they pretty much told fans, we're going to trust Peyton going in to what will be his last year of eligibility and his last year at Auburn.
Yeah, year 2 transfer quarterbacks, that's when you really see the magic, all that sort of thing. Pre-bowl game, those were the talking points.
Right. And then the bowl game happened. And he pulled him. And to make matters worse for Thorne, Hank Brown came in after Holden. obviously bad for Holden as well, and went 7 for 9 for 132 yards. He threw a dime. There was one to Caleb Burton that was the same route and throw that Thorne had earlier in the game. He saw it, same as Thorne did, but he made the throw. And Burton had a step in both scenarios.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be difficult for Holden Geriner to overcome. I think Hugh Freeze wants to play his guys. And Holden's situation, unfortunately, is that he is just similar to Robbie. He's not Hugh Freeze's guy. They brought Thorne in. They practically handed Thorne the job. And they were going to do it again.
Yeah.
They were literally going to do it again until Thorne forced their hand, and he was forced to say, when I asked him after the bowl game, that they were going to have an open competition. I still think it's going to be difficult for these guys to overcome Thorne's experience in some ways, but I also don't know what you see from Thorne in practice that tells you that it's going to translate to a game at this point. So Hugh Freeze is going to have to do that math and try to figure out what kind of risk he's willing to take going into next season, because you got a lot of young receivers that are coming in that are super talented. And if you want to keep them going into their second year, at Auburn, you got to show something next year.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be a really hard re-recruiting job for him. Is Holden Geriner the guy? Well, we know receivers love Holden in practice. They rave about him in practice. It just hasn't translated to a game yet. I just don't know if that's similar to Thorne. Like, what is Thorne going to show you? Well, if Thorne practiced like mediocre, let's say average, and still won the job because of experience and tape, how much better does Holden Geriner have to be than him in practice, given what we've seen on tape of Holden in games right now as well, to win the job over Thorne? He's going to have to be spectacular.
Yeah.
So does he have a chance? Sure. I'm not ready to say that he doesn't have a chance. Is it likely under this coaching staff? I do not think so.
I think he's definitely got an uphill battle in front of him. And we've talked about this a couple of times. If it's close, then I'd go with someone not named Peyton Thorne, because I don't think he should Peyton Thorne shouldn't leave a doubt in anyone's mind that he has the acumen, ability, talent, whatever you want to call it, to be the quarterback going into next season. It shouldn't be close. The problem is, I don't think anyone is going to have the opportunity, and I'm speaking of the problem specifically for Holden Geriner. He's not going to have the opportunity in the spring to show enough to separate himself in any sort of way. So if and this is how I think about it, if it is close and it's let's just say it's close and it's a tie between Peyton Thorne and Hank Brown, I think you go with Hank Brown. If it's close and it's a tie between Peyton Thorne and Holden Geriner, you likely go with Peyton Thorne, unfortunately, in that scenario. Just because
I would agree. Yeah.
I think that you've seen enough of Holden's he's had the spring. Like, people forget, this is Hank Brown's first spring coming up. He wasn't here last spring.
Right.
So this is going to be his first opportunity to go through a spring camp, be there all summer. So he's really just getting into all of that stuff, and he's already had a good showing on the field. Holden doesn't even have that. And he's had an additional spring, so he doesn't have the new guy, whatever. I just think that if somehow Hank Brown comes in a close second, he is pretty much cementing himself to be able to be QB1 in the fall, because I don't know that he's going to fall off enough. I think Holden has to be the best quarterback in camp.
I agree with you. If it's close between Hank Brown and Peyton Thorne, right, I think you go with Hank Brown. And if you're Freeze, you've got Walker White sitting there, who we have not mentioned this entire segment. And ideally, he's your guy for 2025.
Right.
Where you let him develop. If Hank Brown plays well next year, then you've got another re-recruiting job in letting Hank Brown continue on his development and then convincing Walker White to sit and wait until it's his turn as the heir apparent. At some point, you have to begin a pipeline at quarterback if you want to be successful at this level. We've seen the schools that have won consistently and competed for championships and won those championships do that. Not saying that transfer quarterbacks can't be successful, if anybody's hearing that. I'm just saying it would be nice, especially at a place like Auburn where they've struggled to produce at that position, to get some guys from high school, let them gestate in your system, and then produce when it's their time.
Yeah.
That's what the QB guru should do.
And you know what? And I think that if there is a quarterback out there who would have the patience to say, okay, I'm going to wait my turn, I think it would be Walker White, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think Walker White as if Hank Brown is actually playing well, right? If Hank Brown's playing well and he's not just kind of like, okay, but he was better than the other options, Walker White's going to be fine to say, hey, man, keep going out there, letting the guy go out there and play ball. And I'll be right here waiting on my opportunity. But I think that he goes into every competition coming up this spring and fall saying, y'all better not slip up because I'm here and I'm waiting on you.
Absolutely.
All right, man. But see, here's what we want to do. We want to hear your thoughts. Holden Geriner, does he have a real shot to get the job done this spring? Because I think that's where the leash is for him this spring. I don't know that he's going to be willing to wait to the fall to see all this stuff play out, but we'll see. But I want to hear from you guys down there in the comment section. Let us know what you think about all of this. As always, the morning drop is brought to you by our folks over at Rogue Shop. Make sure you head to rogueshop.com and use code RAPPORT. America's #1 online dispensary is the Rogue Shop. Sleep, stress, pain, anxiety. They have remedies for all of those things there. Rogueshop.com using code RAPPORT. Before y'all get out of here, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and give us a share so that somebody else can get in on this content. We'll be back at you with another morning drop tomorrow. But until then, and as always, War Eagle.